Hi, I'm Chantra Powell, and I'm the Proven Not Perfect podcast host and a best-selling author on Amazon. Do any of these words call out to you? Drive, ambition, doing, leading, creating. These words call many of us, and sometimes to heroic impact. This is all good until we forget about our own self and our own self needs, mainly care. My Village of All-Stars, they not only command position, but they command influence. Well, there's always a backstory. I myself, Chantra Powell, have had to put myself on the sideline a few times, but I'm still in the game. I'm staying in the game. The only thing different about me is that I'm proven not perfect. Enjoy. Hey, Proven Not Perfect. This is Chantra Powell, your podcast host. I have a great one for us today. I'm talking to Rayna Andrews, who's public health ambassador and food is medicine thought leader located in the Midwest, the mighty Midwest in the Milwaukee area. And with Women's Month 2024 in full swing, I am delighted to share what I believe is a heart-led conversation with this social activist for food accessibility, Rayna Andrews. Rayna shares her story and passion in a 2016 TEDx talk entitled Food Insecurity is a Public Health Concern. Rayna reached over 47,000 viewers in this talk, y'all. Rayna has launched new ideas for food as medicine, adding to the equation, it's not good enough to provide food. It must be thoughtful and healthy. What a novel idea. And she provides us a rubric for us to consider. So Rayna is a published author of a children's book series that cleverly piques our curiosity and understanding by evolving the character to become an entrepreneur. This young girl becomes an entrepreneur. I love it. In true Proven Not Perfect style, you get the girlfriend opening. I'm just warning you, you do. It happens. It's just how we roll, where we reminisce and we catch up. But when I tell you this hits hard, as Rayna's vulnerability is an inspiration, I'm telling you, this hits hard. Also, there's a shout out to my girls, Sarah Owen, past CEO of the Southwest Florida Collaboratory, and current CEO, Dawn Bellamarich, who are both ladies that are advancing a mission to eradicate disparities with a very audacious goal and a very audacious timeline, including poverty. So I think I actually made a commitment to make a connection there. So we all heard it, and it's got to happen. You will want to listen to this. You will want to like it. You will want to share it. Enjoy. Proven Not Perfect. Rayna. Girl.
Yes.
It's been a minute since I've seen you outside of the scrolling, the scrolling that we do. And we see all our friends and the scroll and we're like, oh, hey, girl, double click.
It's been about 6 years in person.
It's been 6 years in person.
It doesn't feel like that.
Because how old is your baby?
Julian is 6.5.
That's what I'm saying. So this is how I know. Because you were one, I just remember the closing tour when my family was getting ready to make a huge move from the Midwest to South Florida. And you had just had baby. And part of the closing tour was to hit those personal spots that were really important to me. And, the privilege to be in the space with you and your baby as he was just born, as you were a beautiful mom, just so concerned with figuring all the things out. But just like we talked about, it was instinctive, right? Like it is insane how instinctive it is. And then when we get the privilege of having our mama there too.
Yeah.
There's something about that just still blows my mind, right? And so I remember being in that place with you. And here we are 6.5 years later. And
a lot of growth. Literally and figuratively, right?
I mean, seriously, can we talk about that? Because I even try to think back to who I was when I left the Midwest and who I am now, 6.5 years in South Florida. When I left the Midwest, I feel like I was a bit broken.
Oh,
Sounds crazy to say, because if you roll the tape back
yeah.
to an onlooker, to an outsider,
You never would have thought that.
girl, it was all good, all gravy, nothing but the high points, right? But when I think back, why do I say broken? I think because what resonates for me is things just got a bit more bumpy and tough. And I believe now, looking back, that that was just the God movement of
Mhm.
making me not fit, personally feel like I fit there anymore, so that I would be ready to move.
Right.
So I just remember feeling like the jeans just feel a little tight, or,
Mm,
the shirt just doesn't fit quite right. That's what I remember. So
mm.
maybe it wasn't broken. Maybe it was just, it was time to move.
I truly believe that we all have and should get used to as a part of the journey our hilltop moments and our moments in the valley. And
Yeah.
what we don't often talk about are the transitioning points, which is the
Girl.
journey up and down. And I
Yes.
think the analogy, the example of the tightening of the pants is your preparation or that transition period up or down.
Yes.
Um, I was
Yes.
in church,
I
I was in
love
church
that.
last week, and the pastor talks about the lilies in the valley, and he used the example of the lily, and that God has you, and the beauty of the lily is that they're perennial, so that they can grow year after year after year, but they'll get to their lowest point. And sometimes when you're in the valley, you could feel like you're in your lowest point, but
Mm.
this next season is promising, and it would never look like you went through that lowest point. And I
That's
feel like
amazing.
in 2016, when we last connected, I've birthed something beautiful and being a new mom, but I was certainly in at my lowest point, postpartum depression, trying to figure things out, am I prepared? Lord, why did I sign up for this? Why? And what was so beautiful, I don't think I saw it as so beautiful, but I realized that there was an agreement that I made with God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And so here we are, six and a
Mhm.
half years later,
Mhm.
and we're both doing that hug, virtually no less, but we're doing that hug. And we're both bringing up that at that place where I thought you had it all going on together, collected, you were feeling like, oh, and you thought I had it all going on, collected. Of course you do. You're promoted to this new place and then this new thing and da 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 da. It's not about that. It's
Mhm.
about what's going on internally and how God is working on us at that place where we are at that moment. And the purity to be able to acknowledge that. Oh my God. Wow. I just got all kind of chills. So
Yeah.
today you we reunion because one of the things that I have seen and acknowledged that you're working on is in the space where I remember meeting you. So I'm going to file it back to, it probably was like 2015, 2014. That feels about the time frame for me. And I was in Milwaukee Forum. I
Oh
don't
my
know if you remember. I'm
goodness.
taking you back, sis. I'm taking you back
Yes.
because this is before you. I knew you as my soror, really.
Yeah.
But you came as a visitor to the Milwaukee Forum meeting. So, just for my listeners, if you are in sort of a local, global community of leaders where there is an organization that pulls those leaders together for a place of conversation, of contracts, of debates, of discussion. A lot of time, the leaders of any place and space that you're in. So that's Milwaukee Forum. That was the group that I was in. Rayna came in as a special guest and speaker. And I remember that night distinctly when you shared an experiment. You
Homeless for the holidays. Yeah.
for the holidays. Talk about that. Tell me, bring it back to me. What was homeless for the
Yeah.
holidays so we can start there because I want people to
Yeah.
know who I connected with initially.
So that was before my days even in food banking. That was before my days with in county government. That was back in my city, Milwaukee days,
Yes.
where I was just on the brink of starting off with the Human Trafficking Task Force of Greater Milwaukee, where I was one of the initial founders with Martha Love, who was in the forum.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Yes, and I remember, so that dates back to that was like close to 2010.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so
I
even
knew it was way
sooner.
back.
And then after that, I ended up joining the forum. But to stick to the story, so there's a statistic that after 72 hours, a teenager or youth begin to engage in survival sex in order to meet their most basic human needs. And the most basic is food and shelter. And I just didn't understand that in a community where we have, I mean, Milwaukee has so many nonprofits covering so many areas. Why is it that a youth can't discover these problems? And so I really want to put myself in the shoes of a young person, and I was probably in my early 20s, mid
You were
20s.
early 20s. Yes.
Wow. I wanted to put myself in the shoes of someone who didn't know of any of these other resources. I knew in the back of my mind 211, but the average person doesn't know about 211, which is our emergency hotline. And
Yeah.
so I assembled a crew because I was also very much into film back then, from a local art institute. It was the Art Institute before it left Milwaukee.
Yep.
And I had some film students who were willing to take this rugged road with me and just really capture some of the moments and the instances. And so for 72 hours, the week leading up to Christmas Eve, I started off at the very top of that hill on North Avenue, going towards the east side. And I didn't have a cell phone, no money in my pocket, just a coat, the clothes that I put on that morning. The crew picked me up from my house and dropped me off at this point. And so I remember the first point was going to McDonald's, where I was able to use a cell phone. And I can't believe it. I can't remember what I wore yesterday. And so but this is all
Yes.
coming back to me so vividly. I remember.
Girl, this is an appointed story for an appointed time. That's what I'm saying. Because I don't remember breakfast yesterday, but I remember that.
Yeah. And so in this experiment, it was for me a way of getting rooted to the lived experience of so many of our young people in our community, that you see the symptom being, they're strung out on drugs, they're depressed, they're stripping, they're selling drugs, but we don't look at the cause, like the
Yes.
root of it, which is abandonment. And so to this experiment, look for cell phone, look for shelter, called around. And in the first, I would say 12 hours, I had nothing to eat and I was running around trying to figure it out. First, they sent me to the Salvation Army, but all of their beds were taken. Then they sent me to a warm bed place, which was a church that had maybe 25 beds laid out in the basement, almost like a refugee camp. And because I didn't have any money, I couldn't get on the bus and I couldn't walk there fast enough for the time that they would close. So I couldn't get a hot bed. And I remember being so desperate, jumping on a bus to Pathfinders, which was the only organization that I knew of. And I was starving. I remember I was feeling delirious at this point, that I was on the bus and I was able to talk to them long enough to get me to stay without paying quite yet. And they ended up getting me to Pathfinders, which they're not supposed to do. And Pathfinders, for your viewers, is an organization, one of the very few that work with homeless youth and provide shelter and provide food and support. And so they just so happen to be making meals for Christmas. And for my background, I knew them and I said, I need some support. But had it not been for that, and just thinking about a young 14, 15, 18, even 21-year-old, that's a system that you can't navigate. And in this scenario, the auspice is that I lived with my mother, who had an abusive boyfriend who was sexually assaulting me. My mother did not believe me, and I was kicked out of the house. The reason why I use that is, prior to doing this experiment, I was interviewing a number of homeless youth at Pathfinders and a number of other outreach clinics. And that was a common thread where there was physical, sexual abuse, where the parent did not back the child and the child was removed from the home or abandoned in some way. And so that was my experience, and that's what I shared, and that there is a need for us to coordinate the system, and there's a need for us as community to protest to pressure test the systems at hand, because even at the time, and 2-on-1 has come a long way, but even at the time, I couldn't get connected to my basic human need to meet my basic human needs, which is why they exist. And the resources that they connected me to either weren't available, were out of order. And if just think, I don't have a cell phone because I've just been abandoned. It's like, who do I call?
Wow.
And then I could begin to see by day. So that night.
And this is Christmas season when everybody else in God's world is line and figuring out the challenge of what gift do I give, right? And which party do I go to? What do I cancel? Like that is the beauty of this conversation happening right now. The faceless aspects of the holiday season.
I didn't look like I do now. I had on a scully. I had on a black inconspicuous coat. I had kind of like a hoodie. I had some jeans and some boots. Mm-hmm. And that night, I actually slept in the loading dock outside of the Art Institute because there was like, it was kind of like a covering. It was freezing cold, but I mean, there was cardboard boxes and like, I cannot do this. So the next day I woke up to look for additional resources, and it's over there by where the old Grand Avenue Mall is. And I went into that Marriott. You know how some of the courtyards have like the fresh fruit, like the oranges and apples. So I went in there again, just starving. And I went and I grabbed some apples and oranges, and I sat in the lobby and I ate them until someone asked me to leave. Mm-hmm. I said, but you know, I'm here waiting for someone, just like you've been waiting for too long. You have to leave. Mm. So I ended up going and hanging out at the park right across the street.
Because we don't want to see it, right? Because we don't want to see it. Oh,
exactly.
But it's somebody's job to see it, to make sure the guests don't see it.
Exactly. And I remember and I slept on the gazebo, and I was thinking, I've got a camera crew in the car across the street. But as a vulnerable woman sleeping outside in the middle of the night, I just remember my inner Spideys just going off like, this is not safe.
Wow.
And so I completed the 72 hours. Finally, I ended up going to, it was so long ago. I remember the next day I ended up finding shelter and a warm meal. And I can't believe the name escapes me. It was at a church in Jackson Square, downtown. And I got a warm meal. But one thing that I'll never forget is that it's so prescriptive that you have to check in a certain time. Mm-hmm. You have to check in for food at a certain time. You have to check in at a certain time to get your bed. And if you're late, one day you'll be taken off the list, and there's a 30-day penalty. Wow. And so just the exhaustive nature on how you're looking to make your basic human needs met. That's so prescriptive and so exact. You don't have transportation. You barely have communication. And you're expected to find a job. I just think the system that we've created is very much slated from the lens of them versus us. And I mean, what we're talking about was like in 2009, 2010, yes, which was really the preparation, unbeknownst to me, for the TEDx that I ended up doing in 2016.
So let's talk about that, because Rayna, that TEDx, I'm serious. I've known you for years at this point. Yeah. And I watched that TEDx and it just hit me so hard. Mm-hmm. One, I think it's brilliant. So Rayna did a TEDx in 2016, almost, to the day. I think it was November 21st, 2016. Mm-hmm. And the TEDx Milwaukee that you did address food poverty, food insecurity. But you didn't really stop there. You also talked about the systemic infrastructure that perpetuates it. And then you ended by offering some really actionable ideas and solutions. So I just ask everybody, if you want some real context, you can press pause on the podcast. You can go to YouTube and you can look up the TEDx with Rayna Andrews from November 21st, 2016, and watch it. It's about 17 minutes. It's not a whole lot of time, but if you don't do it before you continue the rest of this, definitely I know you'll want to do it after, because it is a wonderfully designed. It's humorous in the beginning. It opens your heart with laughter, but then it really takes that open heart and starts to plant seeds about the things that you can do proactively to address that faceless world that it's easier for most of us to just walk around and move around. So Rayna, tell us a little bit about the TEDx. I'd love to hear what compelled you to be so vulnerable in telling your story on the stage to the world at that point.
Mm-hmm. So the TEDx is called Food Insecurity as a Public Health Concern. And for those who are going to look for it on YouTube, and what compelled me to actually do the TEDx is that this is when I went from working in procurement, working in city government, to working in food banking. And as a set of fresh eyes, it's like, here you have food banking, which collects food as a repository, and then you have them who collect money on behalf of a network of food pantries, meal programs, and shelters who actually do direct service. And my background being urban planning and real estate development and spatial and the placement of the built environment, how people respond to that built environment, I think I had a unique lens. Mm-hmm. But in doing it, what I wanted to share is the them versus us. But in preparing for the TEDx, that 8 weeks leading up to it, I didn't realize that I had to look to the them that was me. Cool. And so, Chandra, I had.
Girl, I'm gonna double click there. As a woman of God, it is amazing how he does that.
Yes. Oh, talk about divine.
Like, you seriously want me to say that to people outside of me when I didn't even see that myself. Okay. All right. That's what we're doing. Okay. Sorry.
So someone said, you're a pretty good public speaker. Have you ever thought about, because I was doing a lot of community conversations talking about food banking, raising resources, raising friends. We talked about food funds and friends. Yeah. I thought this TEDx would be an opportunity for me to raise some food funds and friends.
Girl.
And so I signed up for the class to do the TEDx, and they said, well, what is your why? I was like, well, I'm here for food funds and friends. And she's like, well, you realize in this TEDx, you can't even mention your organization's name. And I said, And they said, let's see your outline. And I was showing up every week, and you're like, you got to go deeper. You got to go deeper. And when I talk to you, when I tell you, Chandra, this was God working on me, because,
yes,
in this country, we have a tendency to shame people. Before the cancel culture, it was shaming culture, and the shaming culture was long and strong that I'd erased. I was so embarrassed and humiliated as a child for growing up with very low economic means.
Yeah.
That I had blocked out that area and that area of my past. And I realized that I had recreated a new identity for myself.
Wow,
it's in those humble beginnings.
Rayna, talk about that. How many
humble beginnings that your testimony really lives? And since that TEDx, I can talk to you about the countries and across the country that I've been able to speak to tell this story. But in telling my story with that TEDx, it was a journey. And I had like a committee of public health leaders, spiritual guides, people that were, your kitchen cabinet.
Yes.
That were advising me. It's like, I'm not comfortable in telling this version of my story, but somehow they convinced me to do it. And I've even had some family members or people who really know me and know that side of me that says, I don't know if I would have shared that, because, people are going to start treating me differently. And I said, well, that's a part of the problem. That's a part of what I talk about with the them versus us. So the TEDx, Food Insecurity as a Public Health Concern, was really about me telling my own personal journey about being experiencing hunger twice in my life. Once was as a child being raised by a vulnerable single parent, a single mom who was educated, she had a job, but she had gotten really sick with a rare disease that had her in and out of hospitals and nearly fatal. Mm-hmm. And so going from making income to making nothing, which is about 50% of the population of the United States is one sick day away from being in the poverty line. I realized that we went from a 2-bedroom apartment to a 1-bedroom apartment, from me going outside and riding my bike with my friends to changing my mother's bandages and having to decide and figure out, how do we go from making it work? We had magical miracle meals. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so in doing this exercise, I told that very vulnerable story, but I also told the story of Margot, who is a single mother who's trying to figure out if she's going to buy formula and Pampers and put food on the table, right? And then I talked about Maria, who is a senior on fixed income, who has to figure out if she's going to buy her medication or put a healthy meal on her table and juggle the cost of rent. And then I talk about Jim or Jose, who has various skills, but he can't seem to find a living wage. Mm-hmm. And so he's juggling to make ends meet. And I talk about Richard, who is educated, very similar to my mom's story, who is married, has a family of 3, but lost his job and is trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I pick up the pieces again? Yeah. And so I found it to be powerful and therapeutic in uncovering what I had buried, to see what were the odds that I end up feeding people for a living. And as I went from feeding the body, now I'm feeding the soul. And I've gone from
uncovering what you were forgetting.
Yeah. Uncovering what I had buried.
What you had buried. Mm.
Yeah. And in that TEDx, I talked about the system where people don't just wake up hungry one day. Right. It is systemic, where you lose your resources, where it's a part of household instability. And my call to action was that for those in the nonprofit space, you may be for food, you may be for education, you may be for housing, you may be for employment, that there's a consequence for you to be so monolithic and laser focused just on your thing. And that really what we're talking about, and what we all should be working towards, is an anti-poverty strategy, which is focused on household stability. Because what we're experiencing in hunger is a symptom of an unstable household. So let's say this was like indicators or like tires, spokes on a wheel, right? In order for that tire to work, you have to have adequate housing, food, health, employment, education. These education as in literacy, like food literacy, academic literacy, fitness literacy, lifestyle literacy. Like, these are basic needs that are missing for many, many individuals. But if these are spokes on the wheel, and let's say if you don't have stable housing, well, your car can't function because that wheel's not moving. If you don't have food, again, that car's not moving because you've got a flat tire somewhere. And the call is to get us to see as practitioners, and that one, we have a responsibility to the people to do what's best for their interest. And 2, to be unwavering in that pursuit. Oftentimes in nonprofit leadership, the dollars that are available are finite. And so you have like these fiefdoms where, yes, you do food, but now you're going to do workforce development to tag into these dollars to make your mission work. My call is can there not be an assembly of funders to change the narrative, so that we can now begin to look creatively and work cooperatively in concert? So if I'm in food, you're in housing, you're in employment, you're in education, can we not come together, put our puzzle piece together to create a dynamic strategy and concert that really focuses on stabilizing the households within our region of service? Yes. That has not been the conversation, and that is the call to action appeal through my TEDx, that it's not them that need to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, because guess what? They don't have boots in the first place.
They don't have boots.
It's really a system-wide approach that's failing the people, because you don't just wake up hungry one day.
So what resonates for me, honestly, is collaboration, right? Mm-hmm. You're saying, how can we stop focusing on one aspect of a wheel and
Absolutely.
acknowledge that it is a wheel. And if we all have some money, some funds, how do we come together with even a portion of them to attack a portion of it, to create the space for solutioning, to maybe then convince us all to do bigger? Girl, I love that. So where does
Mhm.
that conversation live on a bigger basis?
Mhm.
Have you made space to try to bring that one forward, from political impact, or from, you know what I mean? How are you seeing that TEDx and that seed planted sprout in community? I can tell you one, there's an organization, and whether they've heard the TEDx or not, there's an organization in Southwest Florida called the Collaboratory. It's formerly the Southwest Florida Community Foundation. 13 years ago, their leader back then, a woman by the name of Sarah Owens, who I have a great deal of respect for, brought forward a mission to create something called the Collaboratory, rebranding itself. And the goal, by 2030, is to address poverty, education, homelessness, all of the things, right? Workforce. A very, very audacious goal. Okay. I've had the privilege to serve on the board of that organization, be a board of trustee member. So I definitely want to make a connection for you with their new CEO,
Mhm.
because I just think that there's an opportunity there, just to collaborate.
Mhm.
But now, I see that so many of us are realizing that we can't do anything alone, and it does take the systemic approach. Are you finding spaces more interested in cultivating that, advancing that? Where does this go, and how do people that are listening to this in spaces and places around the world think
Mhm.
about aspects of you know human basic needs, and ills of society? How do they think about tapping in?
Yeah, I think a couple of things have happened since that TEDx. I've spoken at a number of global and regional associations, and I know from all the pings on Google, all the universities who have cited and used my TEDx as kind of like a case study
Hmm.
for their classes. And so I know the word is getting out. But even personally for myself, during the pandemic, there was a task force developed here in the greater Milwaukee area
Yeah.
where this was a very interesting time for us, where funders were asking the nonprofits what they needed. Like how can we shift the narrative on how we've been doing things to be of greater support rather than dictating in an area that we're not experts in.
Mm.
So is it technology? Is it capacity building? Is it just financial resources? Like how can we support in having you collaborate together? And I think what that also caused as a result are the nonprofits within this region working together to do like group purchasing orders. So instead of just one nonprofit or one food pantry needing to buy 25 gallons of milk, getting five together, and you're able to then buy 125 gallons of milk. So the cost and the margin goes down.
Yep.
So as a matter of fact, I'm working on a healthy food pantry pilot here in Milwaukee. We're just doing a beta test with one, but the idea is since that TEDx, I've gone from food insecurity as a public health concern to now really focusing on nutrition. And in focusing on nutrition, it's transitioning it to the future of nutrition security and
Wow.
what that could look like. And so I've done a number of talks on nourishing our future, nutrition security as a public health imperative, where it's one thing to focus on getting people food, but now that I've been working in food as medicine, it's looking much broader at the consequence of just giving people processed food.
Girl.
The number in
So it's
the
not okay to just fill my sack with a whole bunch of stuff that honestly is going in me and going through me and doing absolutely no good. And actually, in a lot of instances, it's doing a lot of harm.
That's exactly it. And I'm not tooting my own horn here when I say that was beyond my time, but I felt like food banks have been around since before the 80s, and they were born out of um, federal programs where they had excess food, they needed local partners to help them distribute it
Yeah.
on a wide level. And so they've been doing that, and it's like they haven't really changed the way that they've done things. And so for me, I always thought about, well, what is the consequence? Because I was brought into the food banking system in the mid 2000s from the lens of how do we look upstream? I was brought into the food bank to solve the problem of hunger. And in solving it, you have to define it. And in defining it, I realized that we talk about hunger, hunger, hunger. How do we solve hunger? Well, you can never solve hunger because it's a symptom. It's at the individual level. You can't measure hunger, right? It's a bodily symptom. And so a big issue in the spaces that I operate in with the food system is that we're not speaking the same language. So the way to do that is to solve for food insecurity, which is on an index, which is the level of how much, could you afford the food that you ate in the last 12 months? And how could you access it? What was your level of accessibility? So to answer your question, what has happened since then? I've gone from the conversation of feeding America, not the organization from the sense of getting people food, to truly nurturing America, looking at the impact, the quality, quantity, variety, the accessibility that the food has to the individual receiving it at the household level. And so since then, you have the definition from the USDA on food insecurity, but you also have the definition for nutrition insecurity. And I'm just excited about this because people are really picking up this conversation for the need to focus on nutrition security. And really, nutrition security means the consistent access, availability, and affordability of foods and beverages that promote well-being, prevent disease, and if needed, treat disease, particularly among racial, ethnic, minority, lower income, and rural and remote populations, including tribal communities. Chandra, we've had a definition for food insecurity and nutrition for food insecurity for sure since the 80s. Most recently, I'd say since last year, has this definition been updated to include accessibility, availability, affordability, and that promotes well-being, which is the operative phrase. The reason why I focus on this is that last year, September, I had a chance to tune into the White House conference on health and nutrition. And why that's so important is that 60% of Americans have at least one chronic disease. 85% of US health expenditures are spent on chronic disease, and that's $1 trillion industry of sick care. 74% relative increase in diabetes prevalence in near low income versus higher income. And 87% of employers believe that the cost of providing health benefits will become unsustainable in the next 5 to 10 years. So when you think about that holistically, chronic disease has caused a health crisis in our country. It's draining society and killing our families. It's hurting the ones most with lower incomes, and it's crippling employers. And if we talk about competing on a global society, and if you didn't get me the first time with them versus us, if we don't start looking at this from a systems-wide approach and even understanding that something is broken, like we've really got to disrupt the status quo, or these numbers will just continue to increase.
Girl, when I wrote the book, Proven Not Perfect, it was very much in the lane of a woman doing it all who was not taking care of herself because she was doing it all, right? And when I hear you and think about all that you're tapping into as it relates to healthy lifestyle, healthy thinking, but not them versus us, for all. Girl, this work has to advance, right? It has
Absolutely.
to. We can't afford another global pandemic where we get caught flat-footed, not having addressed some of these ills that are right here, right? But I do believe, as I come to learn, and actually some of the conversations that I've been having in podcasts that are going to be flowing are all in this lane of health. Even as I talk to my friends who are doctors, practicing medical physicians, who underscore the fact that, Chantra, folks need to be focused on staying well, period. Staying well. because once you get sick and you come into the system, the demands, the time demands, and the inefficiency that exists because of escalating costs don't allow the health practitioners to really robustly offer you an understanding and diagnosis that can get you where you need to go. It's easier to listen very quickly, slap something on you, throw some meds on you, and in most instances, exacerbate the very simple problem to solve that could have been solved preemptively with food as medicine and lifestyle. It's a whole pivot of a conversation. Wow. All right. So I know we're coming to the end, and there's probably going to be a podcast number 2, because I feel like, in so many ways we've scratched the surface, and you're such an expert in this field that I know that there's more that we can tap into. But I'd love to talk a little bit about what you're doing now as an author.
Yes.
Published, doing some really cool things.
Yeah. So I do have my books, and I always keep this one in my book. This is the original Alex McGreen, The Tale of the Mysterious Kale. And my second book, which I'm really proud of, I probably, it's in my car, is Alex McGreen and the Bok Choy Boys. And it's all about healthy eating for children. The nature of the work in the area of food as medicine that I do here throughout Wisconsin is really focused on adults 18 and older. But I really, truly believe if we're going to solve this issue, and as you said, be more preventative than reactive, it's important that we look upstream. And I'm excited that I'm working and piloting some projects looking at baby in utero, right? So we're working on maternal health projects, which focus on high-risk, low-income pregnant women who are at risk of developing gestational diabetes or preeclampsia, in just resulting in healthier birth outcomes. So we provide the meals, we provide one-on-one weekly coaching, we provide health biometrics. I mean, we do need to do a part 2 for me to go through. We provide and remove every barrier to the diet and lifestyle challenge. So when you think that, what is the barrier? There are 6 indicators that are in the way of people becoming healthy. Most free programs provide access and cost. That's what you get at a food pantry. They'll give you a box of food. It didn't cost you anything. You have access to it. It also has to taste good, right? You have to have stuff that matches, stuff that's relatively familiar. It has to save you time. You have to have some literacy around it, like how do I use this? And you have to have a level of support. Yes. Like not everybody has a wok. Not everybody has a full set of pans and good knives, right? Yes. And so through the program that I lead, we've been able to combine freshly whole ingredients, locally sourced, balance of relatable and exploratory, which I call culturally sensitive, and create a diet profile in partnership with our registered dietitian nutritionist and our culinary team to create these nutritional guidelines and profile, which create these delicious, nutrient-dense meals. And there's a lot of education that we provide around that. And so we not only tell you the things that you need to do, but we also provide you with those resources to take the guessing out of it. And there's a transition and a step down process to where when you leave our program, you've transitioned to a place of self-reliance. And so I've been working on this since the summer of 2021. I started this in December of 2020. And really launched one of our first pilots or series of pilots throughout the spring of 2021. And it's grown to more than 300 people who have been through our program. And specifically right now, the pilot with the maternal health, there's 120 women. And if you count the unborn babies, 240 lives that we're impacting. But maternal health, as you know, is a very big challenge here in Wisconsin.
Girl in the U.S.
Through my books, I really focus on healthy eating. So Alex McGreen, The Tale of the Mysterious Kale, is about a young girl who develops a vertical garden with her grandfather, and there's an explosion of kale. So what do you do with a bunch of kale? You make kale cookies, kale chips, kale smoothies, and they go kale crazy. But when you have abundance and you have a product that people love, what do you do with it? Well, you begin to market it. So part 2, Alex McGreen, The Bok Choy Boys, is her journey to entrepreneurship as this 13-year-old selling her products at the local farmer's market. It's cute. It's relatable.
Wow.
Yeah. You can find it at healthyfoodmovement.com. Yeah.
Wait, say that again. Where can we find that?
You can find the books at healthyfoodmovement.com.
Healthyfoodmovement.com. I love that. Well, I will be probably gifting a few people this holiday season because I think that, it's a season for us to start to be really intentional about the things that we do. So I'm so proud of you. And I miss the hug, but the virtual hug we'll have to do right now. Keep doing it, keep rocking out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to us having many more conversations on Proven Not Perfect. I believe my community is going to really love you. It's your community too, because that's how we roll. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. And I think from this, definitely proven not perfect.
Mm. Amen.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
See you soon. Bye.